And without further ado, we'll get started on the subject for tonight. This evening's webinar is titled Available License Types in the City of Los Angeles. We are going to provide an explanation of each of the commercial cannabis license types that the City of Los Angeles has established, as well as the status of their availability to social equity individual applicants. So again, we'll go over all the different license types, and then we'll let you know what's the status of your ability to apply for those license types currently. The agenda for this evening, we'll start off by taking a look at some key definitions and terms. The second section will go into a deep dive of each license type in the City of Los Angeles, and I'll let you know, is there a cap on the number of licenses available? Are applications currently being accepted? Are there application processing restrictions? And some key points about the application process. So we'll go over those 4 points for each available license type. And we'll also really briefly take a look at state licensing, as that is a requirement as well as a local license. And wanted to make sure everybody's aware of some upcoming licensing deadlines. We're talking about licensing. Obviously, it's of interest of you to know of some upcoming licensing deadlines for social equity participants. And we'll highlight some resources before we jump into the Q&A section. Okay, so let's just review a few important terms and definitions. The first one I want to touch on is license cap. So a license cap refers to a restriction that has been set on the number of licenses available to the public or to social equity applicants in the City of Los Angeles. So we've got cultivation license types or retail license types. Some of them, not all of the license types, have a license cap. There's a maximum number of licenses, that specific license available. And so we'll take a closer look at each of the license types and talk about license caps later. The second term is community plan area, also known as CPA. The City of Los Angeles is made up of 35 community plan areas, each with their own unique community plans that guide the policy and land use of their specific area. So license caps have been set on some cannabis license types in each community plan area. So the 35 community plan areas, again, they've all got their own specific general plan, community plan, and it outlines some policies and land use specifications that guide how the city plan area should be developed. And again, we've set a cap on cannabis licenses by community plan area. I'll show you a map of this later. So the next definition we'll take a look at is undue concentration rule. This rule is how license caps are set. So the rule restricts where cannabis businesses are able to locate so that a certain area is not oversaturated with cannabis operators. The rule sets a limit on the maximum number of licenses that can be issued in each Los Angeles community plan area. So you've got your community plan areas, there's 35 of them, and each of them have license caps for specific license types, and the undue concentration rule is used to set the number, the limited number of licenses available in each of those community plan areas. And the goal of it is to really take a look at how many actual licenses, cultivation or retail, are necessary in that community plan area, and where do you reach the threshold where undue concentration kicks in. And that's where the city has determined to set the cap on the license types. What we have for the fourth and the final definition is the public convenience and necessity process, also known as PCN process. So this is a process that was created for social equity applicants, as we've talked about, there are license caps in certain community plan areas, and you may want to open a retail license or a cultivation license in that community plan area, despite the fact that it's already met its threshold for undue concentration. It's already hit its cap. The PCN process has been created so that social equity applicants can still apply, or at least they can make a case to apply for a license in that community plan area. And the way that they would be doing this is by basically convincing the city council that the approval of their license application in this community plan area would serve public convenience or necessity. You need to prove that there's X amount of retail consumers in this community plan area, and the cap doesn't serve that number well, and you need to list reasons, and you need to present that to the city council and essentially get their approval to override that cap, and then thus allowing you to then apply for a license and go through that process after you've gotten the PCN approval. So the process, again, it's only available to social equity applicants. It would be for retail licenses and cultivation licenses. If you've gotten the hint, those are the two that we've got license caps on. And the process is currently on hold. It will be available at a future undetermined date. And we will be screaming it from the rooftops, I'm sure, once it is available, because I know everybody is waiting for that to happen. As I mentioned, I wanted to show you what's called the DCR licensing map, and what's on your screen right now is a map of the city of LA and all of the community plan areas, the 35 community plan areas. This map is a super helpful tool. I come back to it in a lot of my presentations. I'll link to it in the end of this presentation too, so you can take a look at it. I'm just going to review one of the uses of this resource, which is to identify community plan areas and what the license caps are, how many people have applied for the license in that community plan area, how many licenses have been approved, and how many are available, if any. So what you could do is you could just click on the available, click on the community plan areas, and that'll give you the data that you're looking for. You could also, if you have a specific address in mind that you want to locate your business, you can type the address on the top right corner. And once you hit enter, this is what would happen if you were to hit enter on an address. I put the City Hall address. So City Hall is located in the Central City Community Plan area. And as you can see, it has a list of what the retail license capacity is. So in this community plan area, there are 4 retail licenses available. How many retail annual licenses have been issued? That's 0. And then pending applications would be pending annual license applications. That's 0. How many retail temporary approvals have been authorized? 7. And then retail applicants without temporary approval. So this is folks that have maybe applied for temporary approval but haven't received the final okay, is 1. And then at the end, the last one is just saying non-PCN application sites available. So this is -3, because as we saw in the beginning, there's 4 available license types in the Central City, but there are 7 that have temporary approval currently to operate in Central City Community Plan area. So that is 3 more than what has been set via the undue concentration licensing cap for this community plan area. But that would not be a location I would recommend applying. But you can also, I can't toggle between this, but if I were to click on Wilshire, it would show me the same thing, it would outline Wilshire in light blue, and then it would list all of those that we just went through for Central City, but for Wilshire. So you can play around, and I've honestly gone through all different 35 CPA areas to figure out which ones have available license types, make a list. So then when I start looking for my license location, at least if it's for retail or cultivation, which I know maybe it's not available right now, but a lot of people are still prospecting. It's just good information to know what's the concentration like out there in each of the community plan areas. Okay, moving on. We will take a look at the available license types. We'll start by reviewing retail storefront licenses, which they're also known as storefront dispensaries in the city of Los Angeles. So the point here is it's a storefront. That's the key word here. You've got consumers coming into a brick and mortar. A quick summary. So are there CPA license caps for retail storefront? Yes. Are applications currently being accepted for retail? No. Are there social equity program processing restrictions? Yes, absolutely on this one. Retail storefront licenses are limited to social equity applicants until January 1st, 2025. We'll take a little bit of a deeper dive here into some important information. Okay, so to start, like I said, a license cap has been set on the number of retail licenses available in each of the 35 community plan areas. Applications are not currently being accepted. A lottery was administered to determine which eligible social equity individual applicants were selected to apply for a storefront retail license in community plan areas that have not reached undue concentration. So the 2022 lottery, the folks that were selected in the 2022 lottery for the retail storefront is specifically to apply for a retail storefront license in a community plan area that has not reached undue concentration. And if a CPA cap has been met and you have a business location for your retail storefront that it's necessary, you need your retail operation to locate in this business premise, there will be an opportunity to apply for that license through the public convenience and necessity process that we reviewed in the previous section. But unfortunately, the process is currently on hold. It will be available at a future undetermined date. The last I heard from Jason at the Department of Cannabis Regulation is hopefully in this fall, I believe. So at some point this year, the goal is to open that up. So it's obviously a key information and key dates that you need to consider if that's what you want to do with your retail license if you won the lottery. And then again, only verified social equity individual applicants can apply for retail storefront licenses until January 1st, 2025. And let's see, before we move on, I guess just a reminder of important key points regarding the availability of retail licenses. First, only social equity applicants can apply for retail licenses. Want to drive that home. I think that the city of LA is just proud to have that available to only social and you can only apply for a retail license, retail lottery. So if you won the lottery, you know who you are. If you're not sure, it's not you. Again, you know if you won the 2022 retail lottery. And okay, the second key point here is that the city has developed a licensing map for informational purposes that you can use to determine whether or not there is an opportunity to establish a retail license in each of the CPAs. We took a look at the map earlier, and I'll provide a link at the end of this presentation, but really simple way to access the 35 community plan areas. And I get the data you need to understand how many licenses are available in each. Okay, moving on to the next most coveted license. Maybe it's competing with cultivation, but it's an easier start than cultivation because a little bit less money to invest and get your business started if you're a delivery company, but they are also actually available in the city of LA. So as you've probably figured out, this next license type that we're going to take a look at is the retail delivery license. The delivery is also known as a non-storefront delivery license. Again, key here is it's retail license, but it's non-storefront. You do not have brick and mortar. Customers are not visiting your doorstep. You are driving to the customer's doorstep. So the good news with the retail delivery license is currently there is no CPA license cap for delivery licenses in the city of Los Angeles. Applications are currently being accepted, check. And this license is only available to social equity applicants until January 1st, 2025. This license is exclusive to social equity program and is not currently available to the public. So as you can see, the availability of delivery licenses is fairly simple. Nonetheless, let's do a quick recap. Delivery licenses are available in the city of Los Angeles. There is no community plan area license cap set on delivery licenses. Applications for delivery licenses are currently being accepted. Delivery licenses will only be issued to social equity applicants until January 1st, 2025. And delivery licenses are not available to the general public at this time. So definitely a good license type to take advantage of at this point, and the easier one to get started financially and spatial. It's like a lot less space than some of these other operations as well. So good luck for those out there that want to go for the delivery license. Our next license type we'll talk about here is non-volatile manufacturing and distribution. We're grouping these two together because everything's the same at this point in time. So there is no community plan area license cap for non-volatile manufacturing and distribution. Applications are currently being accepted, and the social equity processing restrictions, there are none. This license is available to the general public, and it's available to social equity participants, program participants. And so the details regarding the availability of these license types, again, it's fairly simple. Non-volatile manufacturing and distribution licenses are currently available. There is no CPA license cap set on non-volatile manufacturing and distribution. There are 3 new subcategories of non-volatile manufacturing, and the first one is type N, which is infusion. So that's if you're purchasing bulk oil and you're infusing it into a product like a pre-roll or a chocolate, or maybe you're making capsules, whatever that is. If you're taking oil and making a product, infusing it into a product, whether it's a consumer packaged good product or a smokable, that would be considered a type N. A type P is, and for type N, you're allowed to do type P packaging, which is packaging and labeling. So for type N, you can do the infusion, and then you can also do the packaging and labeling. But type P, you are only allowed to do packaging and labeling. So that would be where you are taking bulk manufactured product and only putting a label on it and putting it in its final packaging. You're not extracting product. You're not infusing cannabis into a product. You're simply packaging and labeling carts that have already been put in, the oil's already been put into the vape cartridge, or chocolates that have already been made but need to be put into separate packaging and need a final label on it. So that is a Type P license. Type P is only for packaging and labeling. You can't do anything else under it. Any of the other manufacturing activities, such as extraction or infusion. Then the third license type that's been recently created is called Type S, and Type S is shared manufacturing. And so that's where you would have a location that has one main operator, and then they serve as the main licensee, but then they're able to sublease their building out and for specific timeframes, or maybe they have specific designated areas for another operator to come in and use this shared manufacturing facility. So the Type S could be a non-volatile manufacturer. It could be, they could be have all the stuff available to you for infusion, Type N, and all the equipment necessary for Type P. And you work out a relationship with the main licensee that's holding the Type S as a sub-licensee, and you would essentially be like subleasing the space for certain timeframes, or maybe you have, again, like you have your specific equipment that you've got a designated location. There's kind of multiple ways that you can structure it. But again, there's a main licensee who holds the license, holds the lease, creates a space that meets all of the location and compliance requirements, and has, common areas where all the sub-licensees can do administrative activities, but then also provides a space for each of the sub-licensees to store their product compliantly, to receive product compliantly, and then also to conduct their specific manufacturing activities based on the products that they're creating and the quantity and that they're looking to make as well. So it's an interesting one, and definitely, again, kind of like delivery, it's an easier way to get into the market, have somebody else put up the major financial investment to get a manufacturing facility started, and you're just paying, a monthly fee or some kind of fee structure to the main license holder, and you don't have to get that building modified and updated to meet all of the building code requirements, cannabis requirements. So it's a heavy lift that somebody else can take on for you. And then you just rent some space out. Okay, so enough about the non-volatile, the new subcategories for non-volatile manufacturing. Moving on. So just to recap here, bring it back, but applications for non-volatile manufacturing and distribution licenses are currently being accepted. They are available. There is no CPA license cap. And non-volatile manufacturing and distribution licenses are available to social equity applicants as well as the general public. All right, so the next license type we will take a look at is volatile manufacturing. This license type has been established by the city of Los Angeles, but unfortunately, it's not currently available. So again, the license types have been established for future reference. As of now, there is no CPA license cap. Applications are not being accepted, and there are no special processing restrictions for social equity program. It's just not available to the general public or to any social equity applicant. The next license type is testing labs. So testing labs is a license type that has been established by the city of Los Angeles. There is no CPA license cap. They are currently being accepted, so you can submit an application for a testing lab. There are no restrictions for SEP processing, so it's available to social equity applicants as well as the general public. Some important information about testing lab licenses. So again, just to repeat the same information, they're available. There is no CPA license cap for testing labs. And the applications are currently being accepted. They are accepted by social equity applicants or the general public. The one key piece of information that should probably be highlighted and underlined and bigger than the rest of this text on this slide is that testing lab license owners cannot own any other license type. Obviously, this license is meant to keep the product integrity and intact. And so it wouldn't be in the interest of the public for any testing lab to have a manufacturing license or a cultivation license. It doesn't serve the public interest and safety. So testing lab is available. If you're interested, just a reminder that you can't have ownership in any other license type in the state of California if you own a testing lab license. Okay, so last but not least here would be the cultivation license. So for cultivation, there are different license types, right? There's obviously there's cultivation licenses based on the size of your canopy, indoor cultivation that's based on the size of your canopy. In addition to cultivation, indoor cultivation, other license types that fall under cultivation is one, nursery, and the second one is a processor license type. I'll talk a little bit more about those in the next slide, but for now, just want to review the CPA license cap for each of these. So there is a cultivation CPA license cap, similar to retail. So the CPA license cap does not apply to nursery and processor license. So CPA cap has been set for cultivation, but it does not apply to nursery or processor license types. Applications are not being accepted for cultivation. They are being accepted for nursery and processor. And then here we've got, are there social equity program processing restrictions? No, for processor. So processor is available to the social equity program participants as well as the general public. So again, processor licenses are available to social equity program participants as well as the general public. However, there are processing restrictions for nursery and cultivation licenses. They are limited to social equity applicants until January 1st, 2025. And so just to hit a key point here is cultivation has a cap. So the only way to apply for cultivation is through the public convenience and necessity process, which isn't currently open. If it opens, then a cultivation license is a possibility for somebody who wants to go through that process. And it's would only be available to social equity program participants. Nursery, on the other hand, it is only available to social equity applicants until January 1st, 2025. And they are currently accepting applications and there is no cap. So nursery is a good, smooth initial process, at least here. We know it doesn't have a cap. It's currently being accepted and it's only available to social equity participants. So that being said, as we know, the license caps have been set and they've been met for cultivation licenses in all of the 35 community plan areas. Cultivation licenses are not currently being accepted by the city of Los Angeles. And to apply for a cultivation license in a community plan area that has reached undue concentration, social equity program participants can do so through the public convenience and necessity process once it's available. Unfortunately, at this time, it's currently on hold, but will be hopefully available at a future date sometime this year. And hopefully I'll be doing a webinar on the public convenience and necessity process. Just FYI, there are resources available for you to review what is the public convenience and necessity process right now on the website. I believe I have a link to it at the end of this webinar. So if public convenience and necessity is screaming out to you in this webinar and you're thinking that's going to be my avenue to get my desired license type here in the future in LA, I recommend that while you're waiting for this process to become available, you become as familiar as possible, because you want to be able to hit the ground running. So there's great resources out there that outlines step by step what you're going to need to do and how you're going how to make the case for your license. Some more important information here: the nursery and processor license types are available. So that's good news. A nursery license type is a standalone nursery license. So as a cultivator, you can have your own nursery where you're breeding your clones for your specific cultivation license only. Those clones cannot be sold, or immature plants or seeds cannot be sold to other cultivators. If you have a cultivation license, you can have your own nursery and use everything that you're cloning, but you cannot sell those clones externally. However, the nursery license it's a standalone nursery license, where it's a cultivation license that allows you to grow clones and immature plants and seeds and sell seeds or other types of cannabis used for breeding and cloning. And so you're breeding and cloning for as a service and to create a product for other cultivators. So you're not actually, you don't have any mature plants on site. If you're holding a nursery license, it's only for immature plants and clones that you are breeding for the purpose of selling to other cultivation licensees. So the nursery license is not subject to undue concentration limits. The other license type that we've talked about that falls under cultivation is the processor license. So processor license is also allowed for cultivators that only trim, cure, dry, grade, package, or label cannabis flower. And again, this is a standalone license where you are not cultivating mature plants, nor are you cultivating immature plants and clones. You're only purchasing, or you're only providing a service to other cultivators, and you would be providing a service whereby you're trimming, curing, drying, grading, packaging, or labeling their cannabis. There's no actual growing of cannabis products or clones that goes on at a processor licensed site. It's only the processing of cannabis flower for other cultivators. The processor license type is not subject to undue concentration limits. And only verified social equity applicants can apply for cultivation licenses until January 5. Public convenience process. The license is also only available social equity applicants until January 5th. Available accepting applications, no caps. And it's only for social equity program participants. The processor license is available to the general public and to social equity program participants. So we talked about all of the available license types in the city of Los Angeles. Hopefully it was comprehensive and clear which license types are available, or which ones have been established, and which ones are available to you at this time, and then which ones may become available at a future date, and how you would be eligible for them. The next piece that we're going to take a look at here, it's really brief, but I just wanted to highlight the state licensing process. So let's move on. So state licensing, we've mentioned it, maybe not in this webinar, but many other webinars, but in the state of California, you're required to be duly licensed. So what does that mean? That means that you have to have a license from your local jurisdiction. In this case, it's the city of Los Angeles. And in addition, you need a cannabis license from the state of California. And so the state of California licenses are issued by the Department of Cannabis Control. This is just a screenshot of their website where it outlines the license types available by the state of California. If the license is available at the city of Los Angeles level, it's available at the state. When it came to creating license types, it started with the state. The state created the maximum, they established all of the license types and have the maximum amount of license types available. And then the city and county jurisdictions were able to choose whether or not they wanted to permit commercial cannabis activities in their jurisdiction. And they also got to pick and choose what license types. So the state has more licenses available than the city does. But if you can't get licensed at the city, you can't apply for that license at the state. So let's see, for instance, right now, okay, so a license type that is available by the state is cultivation, right? And so technically you could probably submit an application for cannabis cultivation. They'll probably take your money and let you submit the application. But the first thing that they do is they call up the city of LA and they say, hey, is so-and-so in compliance and on track for getting a cultivation license in the city of Los Angeles? The city of Los Angeles says no, because they're not issuing cannabis cultivation licenses at this time. And so then your application gets denied and your fees are not refunded. So dual licensing is key. You have to have local authorization prior to applying for your state license. The city of Los Angeles, in this case, will require that prior to applying for a state license, you have submitted a temporary approval application, or not too far in the future here, an annual license application with the city. You'll have to have it submitted in order for the city to say, hey, it's okay to start reviewing their state license application. But in order to approve your state license application, you will likely need a full approval of the local license before the state will finalize. So you can work on the two applications concurrently, but you can't apply for the state before you apply for the city. And your state won't be approved before your city is approved. So you can work concurrently, but they will be approved in a linear fashion. So as you can see, the cultivation license types here are pretty similar to what we just outlined with the city. I had mentioned that there are some really important upcoming licensing deadlines for the DCR and the state. And so briefly wanted to take a look. There is on the screen here a timeline, and I've got this linked on the final page of this webinar so you can get your hands on it versus having to dig through this webinar presentation at a future date. But here we go, June 30th, 2023. I can't believe it, but that's like a month away. That is the last day for the California Department of Cannabis Control, DCC, to issue provisional licenses to local equity applicants. So if you're banking on getting a provisional license, you have to have already had your provisional license application submitted a long time ago. It needs to be currently under review, and the last day that they will be able to review that application and issue a provisional license is June 30th, 2023. And if your license application is not approved by June 30th, 2023, then it doesn't necessarily cancel out your application. It's just you're no longer eligible for a provisional license, and you're now being bumped to an annual license application, which means really the only difference is that you will have to go through a SEQR review, which can add, I'd say, an extra 2 to 3 months to your review process, as long as you're diligently responding to the state and providing the requested information. Another thing here for the DCR, June 30th, 2023, we've got basically applications abandoned after June 30th, 2023 must be refiled as an annual application. This is with the Department of Cannabis Regulation, the city. So if you have applied for an application in the city of LA, and it's abandoned, you're going to have to basically refile as an annual application unless the applicant has a active corresponding state provisional license. So after June 30th, you got your abandoned application and you're eligible for temporary. This is the last day for general applicants to file for new temporary approval applications. So July 1st, 2023, the Department of Cannabis Control provisional renewals become subject to additional requirements. Basically what that means is they're going to, as I've said, provisional licenses, the difference between a provisional and annual is provisional doesn't have to go through the SEQR review and annual does. So after July 1st, 2023, the Department of Cannabis Control can request additional information, AKA CEQA documents, starting July 1st. I doubt it'll start promptly on July 1st, but at any point they can start requesting that information from you. July 31st, 2023 is the last day for social equity individual applicants to file new temporary approval applications. So that's really big. If you're banking on getting a provisional license and you get a provisional license with the state of California, you will need to make sure, or you'll want to make sure that you have your temporary approval application submitted to the city of Los Angeles as well. January 1st, 2024 is the last day for provisional cultivation licenses that would result in an operation equivalent to a type 5, 5A or 5B license to be in effect. January 1st, 2025 is the last day for the Department of Cannabis Control to renew provisional licenses. So and last day, it's also the last day for storefront microbusiness and delivery with on-site sales, social equity individual applicant limitations. So January 1st, 2025 is when, not guaranteed, but possibly delivery licenses would become available to the general public, or processor licenses as well. So just some deadlines coming up. You know them if you need it at this point, hopefully. Quickly, resources. We've got upcoming webinars, May 10th. None other than myself will be hosting the DCR's pre-application process. We'll take a look at really once you identify what license type you want to operate, you need to find a location that's compliant, and the pre-application process is going to review how you determine whether a business location is compliant and eligible for licensure. May 24th is DCR's inspection process. I'll also be hosting that one. June 8th, commercial leases and negotiation. June 14th is navigating neighborhood councils and the Cannabis Commission. These ones there's many more, but these ones I felt like were pertinent and relevant to available license types. If you're thinking about what you want to do, you're going to need to start thinking about commercial leases, and you need to start thinking about your pre-application process, etc. Last, I told you I would link some resources. So you got general available license type information, the state license types, the Los Angeles licensing map for CPA and undue concentration that we took a look at. And now we're moving on to the question and answer portion. So if you haven't already, ask questions using the Q&A box. And yeah, hopefully we have some inbound questions here. I'll give everybody a few minutes to prep their questions. I'm going to start with a question that I didn't answer on my last webinar. That was a couple weeks ago, and we talked about the DCR licensing portal. And the question came in like right at 6:59 or something like that. But I saw it, but we were already closing up shop. So the question was, what's the difference between a business account and an individual account on the DCR's licensing portal? And how are they used? So we're talking about license types today. I haven't even mentioned the DCR licensing portal, but for those of you who don't know, any application process with the city of Los Angeles related to your commercial cannabis business, you're going to submit that application online through the DCR's licensing portal. And you'll need to have register an account for you as an individual, as a person. And that's where you start. Once you're ready to just jump into this process, most of you probably already have done this because it's also how you would verify that you're a social equity individual applicant. You created a user account for an individual. That account is used to do the social equity individual application applicant verification. It's also going to be tied to your future business and license. That would be you as like an owner, and where again you'll attach yourself as an owner to a business premise and to a business entity and license as you get further on in the process. So everybody's got a individual account, and that's where they're going to start on the DCR licensing portal. And then once you have found a location, basically, that you want to see if and verify whether it's compliant with the city's requirements, you're going to need to do a couple things before you can do what's called the pre-application process, which helps you determine whether your location is compliant. And the first thing would be is you're going to have to basically, before you create your business account, you have to register your entity with the Secretary of State with California. So you'll register your entity. You also have to get a federal employer identification number, and you have to get a seller's permit with the California Department of Taxes and Fees. So those three things you need to do to establish your business entity. The second thing is, once you have your business entity established, you then also need to apply for a business registration tax certificate with the LA Department of Finance. You'll submit this form. I'll review it in the pre-application webinar next week, but you have to get your business registration tax certificate with the LA Department of Finance. So once those two steps have been completed, you would then use the numbers that the Secretary of State gives you, and the IRS and Department of Food and or Fees and Taxes as well. So those three numbers for your entity, but then you will also be given a business registration tax certificate number from the LA Department of Finance. You need all of those numbers in order to really start your business account on the DCR. You can start it without all those numbers. You can just do like the general, get your username and password set up. But in order to really start utilizing that and get your applications process started, you would need to have the business entity established with the city, with the state, and with the IRS. And then you'd also have to apply for your local business registration tax certificate. That's then where you can begin your licensing process. So hopefully that wasn't too much information, but that's the difference between the business user account and the individual. Essentially, your individual account is used as yourself as an owner or as a social equity individual applicant. There's certain things that you would do that just pertain to you as an individual, but everything related to your business entity and related to your local cannabis license applications would be done under the business user account. And you need to use separate emails. So all that stuff. Okay. Our next question is, what resources are available to social equity individual applicants? We took a look at that earlier in the webinar, one of the second, like the first or second slide, right? So the business licensing compliance and assistance program, the BLC, which is how I'm associated with this webinar and this program, that is basically has bunch of like online question or online educational resources, and pro bono legal advice is also offered, and there's a link there for it. You get one-on-one coaching, there's a job board, workforce development. There are grants available every once in a while, so we'll link out to some of those resources so you can see what they are. Cool. We got a question from Eric here, and Eric is obtaining a manufacturing and distribution license. Do I need to file for each license individually? And if so, could you give us a quick synopsis on the process, please? So it depends on the situation. If your manufacturing and distribution license is at the same business premise, and it's also the same business entity, it holds the license, then you would just be applying for one pre-application. The pre-application is the initial process that determines whether your location is eligible for the proposed use. So that would be, it's by property and address. And so you would just be submitting one pre-application review. That's one step in the licensing process with the city of LA. You would also only be submitting, you'd have one business account if it's the same location and the same business entity. You're just going to create one business account. You would just have one, you're going to like basically manage your business entity and like all the owners of it. You have to submit, there's an application process for that, where it's just like basically your business entity registration with the city of LA. And that's how like ownership and social equity ownership requirement and verification is done. It's under that like business entity record. And you would only be submitting one of those because the same entity applies to manufacturing and distribution. When it comes to temporary approval, so the first part of this process, you've got the business entity registration. You're going to submit ownership information and the social equity participant information and get that verified. That's one application, and you can utilize it for both manufacturing and distribution if you're using the same entity. Pre-application process is for the location to verify whether the business location is eligible. Again, if both of those licenses are at the same address, you would just have one pre-application. And then for temporary approval or for an annual license, you do need to submit separate applications and pay separate fees for each license type. You can, you would still have it under your one business account, but you would submit one for distribution and one for manufacturing. You can obviously repurpose a lot of the application components, but there are some that would be different. So again, you would have a separate submittal and you'd pay a separate fee. Much of the application would be repurposed, or you could use it for each of them. And then there's separate pieces specific to manufacturing or distribution that you would need to create for each of those license types. So that's how that works with the city of LA. And then similarly, if you're manufacturing and distribution licenses, regardless of whether they're at the same location, you're going to submit separate applications for each of them with the state. So I'm never quick, but hopefully that was a good synopsis. We'll be doing the pre-application review process webinar next week on Wednesday, which will go over a lot of this. I know we hit a lot of big topics when we just reviewed that synopsis for licensing. but I'll go a little bit deeper into that stuff next week. So we had a question come in about whether or not you can apply for your state license and your local at the same time. And so I did review that question. You have to submit your local license before you submit your state license. You can submit them like your state license pretty shortly after you submit your city application, but you do want to make sure that you've got your temporary approval or your annual license in with the city of LA before you submit a state license application. We have another question that came in from Yadira. And so the question here is, can retail delivery licenses have two separate addresses? So the license is tied to the address. So if you were to have a delivery company with two separate locations, you could still use the same business entity, right? Where you're managing all the ownership components for the business entity, but everything there forward. So the pre-application, which takes a look at the premise address, the temporary approval application, and your state license would have to be separate. If you have, I'm not sure I understand the question clearly, but so you meant storefront and delivery at two separate addresses. Regardless, if you have two separate addresses, it's a separate application. Every address is going to require its own pre-application submittal, its own temporary approval, and its own state license. Regardless, you need a separate, the applications for the city and the state are tied to the business premise and the business entity. So those two, like, you can't move a license to another address or relocate. You can actually relocate your local license, but you can't relocate your state license. So it's a bit of a complicated question. I hope I didn't further confuse you, but I'd be happy to answer your question offline too. It sounds like it's a pretty specific question to your scenario. So sometimes it gets a little complicated. So maybe we can talk offline. But that brings us to 7:01. And I know it's late. You guys probably have places to be, but I am available for further questions, or here's a resource. I do licensing all day, every day. So I'll be hosting a couple of upcoming webinars. And you can get my contact information from the admins in the chat box right now if you need to follow up. And thank you so much to everyone for joining today, and for those who participated in the question and answer. Please stay in touch with the Department of Cannabis regulations. Stay in touch with me if you would like to. Thank you and good night. See you soon. Bye.